All right, welcome back, guys. My name is Sam. Guys, today we're going to be talking about the best beginner dirt bike for an adult and also how do you go about picking one. Stay tuned. All right, guys, welcome back. Before we jump into everything, if you guys aren't already subscribed, please help out the channel, hit the subscription button. Also, if you guys want to find great deals on dirt bike parts and gear, there is a link in the description. Go click on that and check that out. All right, guys, if you're a beginner and you're an adult and you're kind of wondering what dirt bike should I get, I know it can be daunting. There's lots of different options. We've got to answer some questions first before we are able to kind of decipher what is going to be the best bike for you. So we're going to do a little bit of a history lesson. I apologize if you already know this, skip ahead, but let's talk about dirt bikes. So there are really two types or engine types for dirt bikes. There's 4-strokes and there's 2-strokes. Now each have their advantages and disadvantages. 4-strokes are a little bit more complicated, but sometimes easier to ride. 2-strokes are way less complicated, but sometimes harder to ride. So it really just kind of depends on what you're going after. But when I say sometimes, to be honest with you, they just kind of make their power a little bit different. All right, now let's talk about where you want to ride the dirt bike. So as an adult, you got lots of different options. You've got the motocross track, you got out in the cross country or open desert or open terrain. And you also have like a trail riding, and then you have like a hard enduro, which also kind of goes into the single track and trail riding as well. Those are the niches for dirt bike riding. And so you got to decide, am I going to be riding just motocross? That'll help you make the decision. Or if you're going to ride cross country, or like just you have open desert and you don't really ride any gnarly single track or even the motocross track, there's a bike for you. Then if you just want to do general trail riding, you can get some bikes. And then if you're into hard enduro, you can also get some specific bikes for hard enduro or gnarly type terrain. Next step is let's talk about all the different brand manufacturers. So you've probably heard of a bunch of them, but there's probably some on this list you may not have heard of that are also high quality dirt bikes. So let's talk about the big names. So let's talk about Yamaha, Honda, we got Kawasaki, KTM, Suzuki, even though they're slowing down and they haven't been changing their bikes for years, and they don't really have a great beginner bike for anyone other than motocross. And then on the off-road world, so KTM also owns GasGas and Husqvarna, so I'm going to lump those all into one. And then you also have Sherco and Beta and TM Designs. So those are the major brand manufacturers. Let's talk about motocross bikes first. So when starting out on a motocross track, the thing you want to say no to the very first is to 450s. Do not buy 450 4-strokes. They are very powerful bikes. They're really hard to hold on to. They have a lot of moving components. And so even the pro motocross racers and supercross racers detune these bikes. So if you're a beginner, not a good idea to go to a 450, regardless of your size. I hear guys, well, I'm a bigger guy, or doesn't matter. It does not help you and you end up getting hurt. And so my goal is always to have fun and stay safe. And so if you can do those things, then you can also work on your technique. And once you've mastered your technique and you feel like you're a safe rider and you've been riding for a while, you can definitely upgrade to a higher power or a higher bore or a bigger 450 for motocross. Honda makes a CR 250R, Yamaha, which is a YZ250F, and you've got the Kawasaki 250X and then the KTM 250SX. Those are all fantastic bikes. Oh, forgot to say the Suzuki, let's say the Suzuki RMZ 250 as well. You can throw into the mix there. Those are fantastic 4-stroke options. Now, those are 250 4-strokes. Now let's talk about the counterparts. So you can ride, if you're going to ride motocross, I actually think riding a 4-stroke is a little bit easier on a track. They make great power, they have great traction. They're very solid bikes to pick. Now, if you're more concerned about learning technique and working on your skill set, then maybe go to a 2-stroke. So they have 125 2-strokes. So Honda does not make any 2-strokes anymore, but Yamaha still makes a YZ125, and then KTM / Husqvarna, so KTM makes a 125 SX. So those are your options when it comes to two strokes. Now let's talk about cross country. So cross country bikes are actually more closely related to the SX or the motocross bikes. All the big manufacturers are kind of jumping into that. So Honda has the CRF 250RX. Yamaha has a YZ250FX. We're doing a big shootout on that, guys. If you guys want to check that out, I'll put the link here on the screen. And then there's also the KTM 250XC, and then you have Kawasaki KX 250X. So those are basically like the motocross versions I just mentioned before, but they have like an 18-inch rear wheel. They have a kickstand, a little softer suspension, sometimes a little bit off-road goodies. The KTM's probably the most set up for the off-road out of all of those, straight from the factory. We really love the Honda, the KTM, and the Yamaha. Haven't ridden the Kawasaki yet. I would love to, and then those are kind of the 250 4-strokes. See that I'm staying with 250 4-strokes. These are great beginner bikes that can last you a long time, and even up to an advanced or pro rider. As you can see in racing on a motocross weekend, there's a whole 250 class, and those guys are incredibly fast. All right, now let's talk about off-road bikes for cross country. So KTM does make a 125, so it's the KTM 125 XC. Yamaha makes a YZ 125X. Now, if I was going to be doing off-road, if I was worried about being the fastest, I would probably stick with a 250 4-stroke. They are better in the open stuff. They stay more planted. You can get away with not having proper technique, but on a 125, they sign off a lot faster as far as the power is concerned, and they're a lot lighter. Now, if you want to, like before on the motocross bikes, if you want to learn proper technique and you want to have a lot of fun, a 125 2-stroke is the way to go. All right, let's talk about trail bikes. So trail bikes for trail riding are gonna be air-cooled 4-strokes. Now, they're basically really mild or tame powered bikes. Now they're super reliable. They have okay suspension, but they're not really designed to go fast. And typically they have a lower seat height, electric start, you know, like I said, air cooled 4-strokes, so not super complicated. But these trail bikes are like the Yamaha TTR 230. You also have the Honda CRF 250F, which is not the same as the R. And then you have on the Kawasaki side, you have the KLX 300 and then also the KLX 230. These are fantastic bikes. Like I said, they have lower seat height, so you could stand flat-footed if you're like, I'm 5'11", so on those bikes I stand flat-footed. So they're really simple, easy, and more affordable, but they're definitely not considered race bikes. They're definitely not considered hard enduro or cross-country race bikes either. These are called trail bikes. Super simple, easy to ride, work great, very reliable, have good resale value. So if you're not as interested in the bigger bikes with the more suspension and more power, this might be the place you want to start. All right, now let's talk about hard enduro bikes. So there is a whole genre that in the last couple decades has really blown up. These are called hard enduro bikes. Now, a lot of these are closed course race bikes. Definitely have some characteristics of wanting to be a trail riding bike. They're not usually very closely related to the motocross bikes. In fact, with KTM, they're a different suspension setup and also a whole different frame. With these bikes, that's where we get the Beta and the Sherco that kind of jump into this. So let's talk about the KTMs first. So KTM makes a lot of different versions. So the KTM 150 XCW, not to be confused with the XC. So this is XCW. It has a lower gearing, a different gearbox than the XC and the motocross bikes. Suspension's a lot softer, and then it has a lower, like I said, lower gearing, more power geared for trail riding and all single track and hard enduro. The KTM 150 XCW is a fantastic bike, has electric start, kickstand, really fun bike, one of our favorite bikes. And they also make, Husqvarna also makes a TE 150 as well. They have some, like the Husqvarna actually has a different suspension setting, but you don't need to worry about that. You're just getting started and getting into things. Now let's talk about Beta, or Beta. Beta has a lot of awesome options. They have a Beta 125, which is a super fantastic bike. I actually prefer the Beta 200RR. They have that the RR and also a race edition. The race edition just has more expensive suspension, but the Beta RR to me has a lower seat height than the KTM, so it's a little bit less intimidating. It has electric start, has tons of power, tons of grunt. It's one of my favorite two-stroke motors. And notice I'm talking about two strokes first. So two strokes are actually better for going slow than four strokes. There's a misconception over the decades that four strokes are better for riding slow, and that is not true. They tend to flame out, where two strokes do not flame out nearly as easily as a four stroke, even in dirt bikes that are geared for hard enduro type riding. So if it was me and I was gonna say I'm gonna do mostly single track and hard enduro, I would go to a two stroke first. You're gonna be much happier with it. 150 XCW, 200, a Beta 200 RR is a fantastic bike. Now, Sherco does also make a 125, but the Sherco bikes are kind of a mix between a cross country and a hard enduro bike. They do great in trail riding. They actually have more of the gearing and the down low grunt, and fantastic bike. So let's talk about some potential four-stroke options. So there isn't a ton of four-stroke options because of the two strokes in hard enduro are just so much better. I also wanted to talk about the WR250. So the WR250 is a bike that is geared more as like a trail slash single track type riding. It is built off the full-size frame of the the SX or motocross version, but it's definitely more mild and softer suspension than you would get from the motocross or even the cross-country bike. So that's a great four-stroke option. Honda no longer makes the CRF 250X. It's not in their lineup. They do make a 450 version of that, but say no to 450s until you feel like you've got a few years under your belt and can understand how to ride with the proper technique. They do make older models of the CRF 250X. If I was going to pick between the Yamaha and the Honda version of those, I'd go with the WR. I think the WR is more reliable. Now let's talk about some outliers. So Beta does make like a 390, which is that's a four-stroke. It's a great bike, has good smooth power, doesn't feel like it's going to rip your arms off, but it is definitely more power than some of these bikes that we've been talking about. It's a great option. And then Sherco makes a 300, so four-stroke. So the four-stroke for that is super linear power, a little bit more breadth than I would say a 250. So I think that's a good buy as well if you're wanting to get a four-stroke instead of a two-stroke. And then let's talk about the 300 two-strokes. So now, hear me out. These guys are fire-breathing dragons, but the magic of a 300 is they make most of their power down low. They don't feel like you're ripping your arms off when you basically nothing, and then all of a sudden all the power hits like the two strokes of old. They make unreal grunt, low in power. In fact, there is nothing better than them. And if you watch any of the hard enduro series, they're the bikes that all the major or the top guys are riding. So KTM makes a 300 XCW, which is a fantastic hard enduro bike. Beta makes X-Trainer 300, is probably the best beginner hard enduro trail riding two-stroke on the market. It's fantastic. It has a 300 two-stroke motor that's detuned, but also it has a lower seat height and great ergonomics for people that are just getting started into riding or possibly even smaller. Fantastic option here. Beta makes a 300 RR as well, which is a great motor, but also has that lower seat height. All these have electric start, super easy to ride. And then also Sherco makes a 300 bike that's fantastic electric start. Now, the only one of those bikes that's fuel injected is the KTM or the Husqvarna or the Gas. I didn't mention Gas as much. Gas is basically a cheaper version of the KTM, and the Husqvarna is their premier with all the extra goodies, and then the race version is the KTM, and the Gas is the more affordable version, is how they define that. All right, guys. So that's my list of bikes as far as what you should look into as an adult when you're getting into riding. Make sure you pick a bike that works best for you. Now, there are bikes that kind of do it all. You definitely can ride a hard enduro bike out in the desert. It doesn't do as well as a cross-country bike. To me personally, I feel like if you're going to buy one bike that kind of want to ride all of those genres, the cross-country bikes do a better job at that. I feel like they have more options for you. But if you're just into doing single track and hard enduro type stuff, the trail bikes and also the hard enduro bikes are the right ones for you. Now, guys, I've gotten this far. I appreciate you guys watching. If you have any comments below or you have any questions, hit me up. I would love to chat through or talk through any ideas you have to see if we can find the right bike for you. If you have any suggestions for me, I've been riding for a couple decades. I love the dirt bike. I feel like we need to bring more people in this sport to get more people, more adults, kids, teenagers. It's brought me a lot of happiness. It's got me all over the United States and made tons of friends all over the world, and I've been really grateful for it. It's been awesome in my life. And also, I have a good buddy that's a professional off-road racer. He's one of the top racers here in Utah that has a training program. This is something, if you want to learn how to ride correctly, this is something I wish I would have known decades ago. I wish I would have had the proper technique, because now I'm trying to undo the years of bad habits and bad technique. And if you can get the proper technique, you're going to be a safer rider and you're going to have more fun, and you're also going to be able to be faster than your friends. So go to ridewiththeknights.com. I'll put a link in the description. You guys can check that out. It has a complete online training program from beginners to all the way to pro, from everything you need to be able to become a safer and better rider. So go check that out. All right, guys, I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you out on the trails.